don't ask yourself, how little can I get away with? It's within the confines of my life.
Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon? That's like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick, aka Warwick Runs on different platforms. Thanks so much for being here. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Before we jump into this episode, which I know that a lot of you guys are very excited about because Jeff Cunningham seems to be one of the most popular people to have on this podcast, we're having part 2 today where Jeff has actually promised that he's going to reveal all of his secrets. Before we jump into that, we obviously have to talk a little bit about the marathons in Tokyo, the World Championships. We had some really exciting races, and I'm not going to dive into the details of the results and all of that, but there was some drama, and I guess almost first time ever, if not first time ever, at least a lot of us, we've not seen what happened with the men's start on Monday morning, and that is that there was a false start. I mean, we do see this from time to time, especially in the sprint distances, but in a marathon, and it was a very clear one, and it seemed like everyone was just super confused about what to do and how to solve this little issue of someone having a false start. Luckily, no one was disqualified. The race started normally just after that, but I'm still curious about like what the athletes were thinking. I definitely need to have one of the athletes on the pod just to ask them about how that felt with a false start in an event where they're prepared so well and they're so ready to get started, and they feel like they have started because they were stopped 100 meters in. Curious about that. All in all, I would say that it seems like the Tokyo World Championships, especially for the marathon event, was a very successful one, and the athletes seemed happy. There were a lot of people out on the streets cheering them on, and that's obviously fun to see. In terms of the American runner, Caitlyn Young, we saw that he had a little bit of a fall there, actually, which obviously is not ideal, but I'm very impressed with the way he just got up and still was competing for the medals until the very end. I feel like it's super inspiring seeing this, and it's also been really interesting seeing the athletes preparing for this with the heat, I guess. The heat all over the world. The summer has kind of helped a lot of runners to prepare, but still, I think it's hard to prepare for what will happen at the World Championships and in heat like that. Anyways, just wanted to touch on this because what is the Marathon Podcast if we didn't mention the World Championships here? You are not here for the World Championships. You are here to hear Jeff Cunningham. And he did tell me just before we started this conversation that today, Christian, I'm going to reveal all of my secrets. And so with that, I think that we'll just jump to the conversation with Jeff Cunningham. This is part 2. We're back, Jeff. We need a part 2.
Well, I don't know if everybody needs part 2, but they're going to sure get it, right?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had as many people reaching out and first of all, like asking about or saying that they love the episode, but the other also is like questions about when will part 2 come out, and people just being so excited and people sharing it. So, yeah, you're a popular man on the podcast.
I really, really appreciate that. And it's really flattering to hear that people actually are interested in what I have to say. Sometimes I just say a lot of stuff and hope that eventually something just sort of sticks to the wall. So I always tell people that I don't have a whole lot of skills in life, but one of those is my ability to talk a lot. And so if some people find that entertaining, instructive, helpful in any way, God love them. I'm here for them because I don't run out of breath very often.
That's perfect for a podcast. Today I was thinking that, we talked about a lot of fueling and mindset and stuff last time. And what we talked about at the end of the episode was that we need to have some more of the secret sauce in terms of training. And you texted me yesterday and said that today you're going to share all your secrets. So I'm curious, when you say that, what is it that you mean? And I'm gonna let you kind of start this off a little bit in your way. Like, obviously, I will ask you questions, but I assume that there are some things that you already have in mind.
Nothing that I have in my bag of tricks is a secret. It's a compilation of a whole lot of really good stuff that people who have come before me and are still in the coaching business are already doing. Now, I've changed a couple of things. I make some tweaks to things. I do some variations on some basic elements of coaching distance runners to sort of make it my own in a sort of a way, but you don't get to make lactate threshold your own. You don't get to make max VO2 your own. I mean, it is the human physiology of the way we build an aerobic system. And so the way you implement the workouts, the way you understand the science of how to build an aerobic system and then assign the work in appropriate doses, I suppose there's a lot of talent that goes into that to some degree. It takes a lot of experience. If it doesn't take talent, it takes a lot of learned experience. And I feel like I'm starting to build that. I'm nowhere near my peak as a coach. And frankly, I look up to the people who are doing it better than I am. But I said that a bit tongue in cheek because, Christian, there are no real secrets. Dr. Vigil, Dr. Daniels, Mark Wetmore, Heather Burrows, Pat Tyson, right? Arthur Lydiard. These people have done it better than I have for a long time, did it better than I have for a long time, the ones who are no longer with us. And all I've done is just you get on the phone and you talk and you ask questions and you make mistakes and you have to be willing to change your thinking on something and be a bit malleable. And you can come up with your own training system. But honestly, um, most coaches are doing things pretty similarly in a lot of ways, and I always tell people, and I know they hate this, but we have a saying in that there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, right? And uh, nobody's skinning cats, people. Okay, just bear with me on this. But what I told somebody the other day was, you can either skin it from head to tail or tail to head, but everybody's got to be using a sharp knife. So people aren't doing it that differently. There's nobody out there having people drink 3 gallons of reindeer milk and do 12 jumping jacks before every workout, and that's the secret. No, nobody's doing that. We're all doing variations on about 5 or 6 different kinds of paces, assigning them in high doses if you're coaching the marathon, and then hopefully your runners come out fit, healthy, happy, the other end of the tunnel, and you get to a starting line ready. So that's what I mean, right? I'll share my
Yeah.
secrets, but oh boy, are they really secrets? Nah, not really. Not really.
But I totally agree with you. But then there's also what you're saying here is that you're learning from people, and all of us we're learning from other people. But there's also something about what you take out of that, right? Like, if I have a conversation with you and someone else has a conversation with you, and you're saying the exact same things, we might still interpret those things differently. We might, take out things that are maybe I take out something that's less important and the other person takes out something that is very important, and then you end up saying, yeah, but I was listening to Jeff, and then you weren't actually listening to Jeff, because you have to find that whole picture. And I feel like you kind of still,
Mm,
you found your way with the help of others there. And when you were
mhm.
talking about this, it made me want to ask you, before you dive into the specifics of the training. uh you know you do hear a lot about the terms VO2 max and threshold and all of that, not obviously as workouts, but also for the marathon distance. For instance, people are talking about, oh, you need to have a high VO2 max. And I'm curious about your take on what's I don't know if you call it a skill. What do you call it? What strengths are the most important ones to have as a marathoner? Like, if you were to rank them, like VO2 threshold, all of those, what would you say?
When you're talking about components of training, and I think um, it's interesting what you said about different people taking different things from a conversation that might be almost identical that you have with one coach or another coach or any individual who's in the arena in the sport, right? And
Mhm.
um, trying to distill this thing down to something that I think is understandable because 95% of the runners who I coach are not scientists, right? They are journalists. They are in tech sales. They might be attorneys. They might be, unemployed, right?
Photographers. Yeah.
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 And so the point is distilling this down to something that's chewable and understandable. Now we can go into a whole bunch of the numbers and talk about millimoles of this and moles of that, and we could talk about um 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 pH levels and finger pricks and doing all this other stuff at practice and testing your blood. And that is really good. It can be really important. But let's face it, most of your people who you're coaching are folks who are going to show up at 8 a.m. to a job, get off work at 5 or 6 p.m., and they will say, "What is on my schedule for today?" Go and do the workout. And frankly, they just need to know that what they're being assigned is quality training in quality doses and in proper periodization so that they can get to their starting line. And frankly, a lot of over sciencing it for people can overwhelm people needlessly. Unless people ask, I'm happy to share a lot of my thoughts on it. But to your question, what's the most important? Well, it's all important to a degree, but when you look at the composition of the races that we run, and let me break it down, starting with the marathon. In the marathon, when you look at the system that you're accessing the most during the race, your high end aerobic system, okay, is going to be 99.9% of the race. Half marathon, 97.5%. 10,000 meters, 90 to 95%. 5,000 meters, about 85 to 90%. If your 5 and 10,000 meter training don't look substantially similar to your half marathon and marathon training, you're doing it wrong. Now, I said substantially similar because there are some key elements that you must interject, which is more anaerobic work. In other words, speed work. Let's call it that. But when I say speed work, I mean speed. Okay. Not something slightly faster than goal marathon pace because we call that slightly faster than aerobic threshold. That's what that is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's not even lactate threshold. When people say threshold, they usually mean anaerobic slash lactate threshold, which is the pace that you can typically hold running all out for about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay.
Mhm.
It's so when people say I'm doing threshold training, what they really mean is about for a really good runner, they mean about their 16K race pace, 10-mile race pace. That's really what we're talking about. For your really good runners, it's half marathon pace. For runners who are maybe just getting into the sport and are more entry level runners who are just starting to sort of get their feet wet, it might be the pace that they can hold for anywhere from 10 to 14 kilometers, right? Okay,
Yeah.
but we're talking about 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, that's threshold. Those paces are just exquisitely important. They are central to what it is we're trying to get done because of the way you build out your aerobic system. And then critical velocity work is critical to any training plan that I will construct for any runner who's racing the mile, 1,500 meters, up to the marathon. Because critical velocity work, which is V-Hill starts it at about 88% up to 94% of max VO2. Some people say 90 to 95% of MVO2. I tend to look at it as 90 to 95% of VO2. That's fine. This is a pace where you get the biggest bang for your aerobic buck. Okay. Running at about 90, 95% of MVO2 pace. Why? Because we have three kinds of muscle fibers. Okay. We have type 1 fibers, which is red fibers. When you visualize them and you actually biopsy muscle and you actually look at it under a microscope, it actually has a pinkish red hue to it. Okay. And that's because of the myoglobin content. All right. Those function exclusively as aerobic endurance, super tough endurance fibers where you can go a long, long, long time, but they're not explosive. Okay. Basketball players who dunk a basketball don't utilize the red fibers to do that. Track and field runners who are running the 100-meter dash and they explode drive phase all the way to the finish line, you're not using red fibers to do that. Your red fibers come into play about 2 to 3% of the 400 meters. Yes, I said that. Even the 400 meters has about a 2% to 3% aerobic component to it, which is fascinating. Some push it even up as far as 5%. That's really sort of beyond the purview of this conversation. Okay. But you have red fibers, they're endurance fibers. Then you have white fibers. People tend to dump your muscle fibers into two big piles. And generally speaking, that is correct. You got slow twitch, fast twitch, slow twitch, red fibers, fast twitch, white fibers. Not so fast exactly. White fibers are bifurcated or divided into two pieces. You got your type 2A and your type 2B. Type 2B is always explosive. Those are your sprint fibers. Those are your jump and dunk a basketball fibers. Those are your explode from the floor up onto a box when you're doing box jumps in a gym fibers. That's what those are, right?
Yeah.
You're running down the soccer pitch and somebody feeds a ball through the front and you take off sprinting all out for about 20 meters to catch up to the ball to try to score, right? Hopefully it's in the World Cup final. Norway versus Germany or something. We can hope, right?
Norway never makes it to a championship, so I don't
Hey,
think
listen,
that.
man. Nobody thought Iceland could win anything either, and they've gotten really
That's
good.
true.
So come
That's
on now,
true.
come on
Yeah.
now.
We'll give them
And then
some credit.
remember when Greece won the European Championship
Oh
too.
yeah.
So keep hope
Yeah.
alive, baby. Okay.
Yes. Let's
No,
hope.
all jokes aside, though, those are your type 2B fibers, explosive sprint. That's what they're always going to be. You're going to
Mhm.
use those more in a 5K. Not a ton, but more in a 5K. You will not use those. I mean, I guess Sifan Hassan used it in the last 250 meters of the Olympic marathon, where I thought she was going to trip over that barricade when she went that little soft left turn. I thought, oh my gosh, right? No, but you got the type 2A fibers. It's a fascinating fiber that when you look at it, you realize that's what every distance running coach in the world is spending time trying to convert / recruit. Okay. They're referred to as malleable. Malleable means changeable, means transitionable, right? You can change them, right? You could change them. And in their untrained state, they operate as type 2B fibers, pure explosive fibers. But if you train them properly, they can actually be pulled toward type 1 functionality and they can function more aerobically. Okay. And frankly, almost all of the hand rigging that we do gets us into that little 2% of the training that we're trying to eke out to maximize performance. Where am I getting 2% from? Well, Lydiard made it clear to us that about 98% of our racing capacity can be achieved by going out and doing what I think we now would refer to as zone 2 to low zone 3, but mainly just zone 2 running.
Mhm.
Go out and run 160 kilometers. That's 100 miles a week for a year or 2 years or 3 years, and you have a chance of achieving 97, 96, 97, 98% of your max. Okay. But go and take what a marathon is. Let's say you run a 3-hour marathon. That's 180 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So what is 3% of 180? Well, it's almost 6 minutes, right? Something
Mhm.
like that. 2% of 180 is going to be about 4 minutes, right? Well, the difference between running 4 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever in a race is significant, right? Even if Lydiard's, numbers were off, and even if it's 95%, right? You can run pretty fast off of just going out and doing a lot of miles. I proved this
Yeah.
to myself multiple times in my career. But we want to maximize our potential. recruiting those top 2A fibers is what we do. What type of training do you get the biggest bang for your buck in recruiting those fibers and making them function in a more aerobic capacity, which makes you able to run faster and farther, as long as you've addressed a lot of other needs in your diet, recovery, and training? It's those type 2A fibers by doing critical velocity training. Okay. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I do it in amounts of anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000, 8,000 meters for a scholastic young lady who might be anywhere from ages of 14 or 15 years old up to 17 to 18. Okay. The boys can handle maybe a little bit more volume, and I might assign that anywhere from 6,000 meters up to 10,000 meters of work, even for a 17-year-old boy who's running
Yeah.
the 5K and the 3K. Okay. Marathoners, sometime 12, 13 K of work. Just yesterday we did 3 times a 1,200, 4 times a 1K, 5 times an 800. All the critical velocity pace on 1 minute of recovery per 1,000 meters run is generally the way I do it. Okay. And you say, what is 95% of my MVO2 pace? What is that? Hey, guys, we don't have to be so exacting when it comes to these paces that we make ourselves crazy. Don't go scrambling down to go into a lab and have somebody put you on a treadmill and drain a gallon of blood from your body and all that other stuff. Okay. We don't have to do that. And a lot of people don't have access to it. And a lot of people don't have time to do it. If you have recently raced 1 mile all out in a state of significant fitness in a race situation, you can calculate 85% of that pace, and that will generally get the job done. If you can visualize this, max VO2 pace is how fast you can run and how far you could go for 10 minutes. Okay. So you take your all out 10-minute race pace, whatever that is. And if you can average 30, if you can average 307 per K, right? That's 5-minute mile speed, right? That means you'll cover 2 miles in 10 minutes. Take about 90 to 95% of that pace, okay? And then you'll be able to know what your critical velocity pace is. Don't get super, super crazy about it, okay? And if you're wondering, if you're about a 3-hour marathoner, then that means your repeat paces are going to be about 6-minute pace. Okay. 50 seconds to a minute faster than goal marathon race pace typically will land you at CV pace, is what I call it. Okay. Now, the faster you are, the much closer that CV pace gets to race pace. So for my guys that run 2:15 in the marathon, right, their critical velocity pace might only be 25 seconds per mile pace faster than that. Some of them maybe even just 20 seconds per mile if they're not speed demons. If they're not super, super snappy and naturally speed inclined, then suddenly, you can maybe inch those paces closer to a marathon pace, and it'll look like something that might be maybe even a little bit closer to threshold pace. What is critical velocity pace, and why physiologically does it work? You are between threshold, but slower. You're under threshold, but over MVO2 pace. So you have threshold pace, which is what you can run for 45 minutes to an hour. MVO2 pace is what you can run for 8 to 12 minutes, all out. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, critical velocity pace is a pace that I would estimate is sort of what you should be able to hold for about 25 to 30 minutes running all out. That's about what it is. So for an elite male distance runner, you're looking at their 10K pace, right? Even for a mediocre male runner, and it depends on what mediocre means to you, you're still probably pretty close to that pace. So you want to know what? I'm okay calling critical velocity pace 10K-ish pace, maybe,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Little faster, maybe for some people who have a really good, who are really snappy and fast, but are still lacking a little bit on the high end aerobic. And it's called the paced between, right? Because you uh, can chip away at your threshold, right? You get fractional utilization of MVO2, so you can actually improve your max VO2 without having to run at max VO2. Why is that
Exactly.
significant? Why? Here's why. Max VO2 pace is hard. Okay. We've heard the term Yasso 800s, right? Maybe you haven't. It's a popular workout in the US. I had never heard of it. People kept telling me about this magic Yasso workout, these Yasso 800s. I'm like, who is Mr. Yasso? I also went and I Googled, and there's some guy named Yasso. I don't remember. It and so people started describing the workout to me, and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't some newfangled workout. This isn't magic. This has been being done for years. That's called MVO2 pace. It's
Hmm.
doing, really hard 800s in multiples of 8 to 12, right? With one-to-one recovery. That's when you know you're probably looking at MVO2 pace, because when you're running MVO2 pace, you do one-to-one recovery. So if you run 800 meters and you're running at MVO2 pace and you run, say, 3 minutes, then you take 3 minutes recovery,
Yeah.
right? Because if you try to do it on shorter recoveries, you can't clear enough
Hmm.
lactate from your blood to be able to get to the line. And then you're just fighting a losing battle, and you'll make it 3 reps, 4 reps in, 3 reps in, and then all of a sudden you're just falling apart because you literally can't hold pace, right? The great thing about CV pace is when you slow it down, and it's not that much. It may only be maybe 10, 15 per 10, maybe 15 seconds per mile speed, maybe 10, 12 seconds per K speed. It's significantly easier. And then your blood can clear, you could clear enough lactate from your blood. Within 1 minute, you can get back to the line, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday we did 3 times at 1200, 75 seconds recovery, 4 times a K, 1 minute, and then 5 times an 800, just stuck at a minute. I mean, it gets silly. I mean, 800 meters. Well, let's run 50. Let's get 52 seconds of no, gosh, guys, 1 minute of recovery, right?
Yeah.
So CV pace is really important. Threshold pace, gotta hit a lot of that, right? Because threshold pace is remarkably good at doing what easy running alone will not do, and aerobic threshold pace as well, which is the pace that you can hold for 2 to 3 hours at a time for good, really good runners. Aerobic threshold pace is marathon pace. So, like for you, you know, you let's see, you ran 241. So that's gonna be
47.
like 610 a mile. So you ran 610 a mile at your last marathon a few days ago, right?
Hmm.
So I would argue
Actually.
that 610 pace is probably your aerobic threshold pace. I would
Yeah.
argue that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Maybe down to 6 minute pace, but
Hmm.
not faster than that. Okay.
Yeah.
Your threshold pace should be probably in the probably 340 per K pace range
Hmm.
is what I think your threshold pace probably is, maybe down to 335.
Yeah.
That's that range.
335 is what I kind of
I would agree
uh
with you. I would
yeah.
agree. I
Yeah.
would agree. Just extrapolating from one race effort off 241 marathon, that's what I'm
It's
guessing.
247. I would have loved to have done 241, but it was
Oh, I thought it was
247.
241. Well, either way,
Yeah.
I mean, you still ran really fast. You ran, what, 620 per hour. You averaged 350, 358 per K, right?
Yeah,
If I'm doing my math
357,
right, something like
58.
that.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. I cannot remember where I left my car keys. I couldn't even remember where I left my laptop. That's why I got on this podcast 5 minutes late. My wife's looking at me, rolling my eyes. But I can tell you, oh yeah, you ran 247 marathon. That's 358 per K. Hey, that's pretty good for a dumb American, right? That I can do that in my head. Come on. Hey,
I'm very very impressed.
come on, Warwick. Give me some props.
Yeah, I'm very very impressed, Jeff. And now it's been 20 minutes of you just giving us such good information here. I'm
I'm
really
sorry.
really impressed. No, no,
Yeah.
this is great. And I'm going to try to like break this down a little bit for
Yes.
people like me who are not like so I would say that I know a lot about training, but I'm much less science. How do you say this?
Scientific.
Science, yeah, scientific about it because I'm a creative, so I'm not that good with all of these things. But uh, and I want you to just jump in and tell me if
Yes.
I'm wrong now. But say you are a fairly fresh marathoner, you are aiming at just doing your first marathon,
Yes.
then the most important thing for you is probably not the VO2 max, right? Because
No.
that is not what you need. You need to have that more lower intensity, maybe some, like you said, low threshold training, threshold training to be able to have,
Yes.
because you will get to a little bit of a higher intensity.
Yes.
But if you're working too much on the VO2, it really won't help you because you will never get to use that capacity at all in a 4 hour marathon, for instance. And so then I guess like we can always argue when is it that you start benefiting from it, because you could also argue that you will always benefit from it because that means your capacity is better at a base level, right?
Yes.
But there are still things and demands that are more important that you should focus more on.
Okay. So
Do,
here
do you agree
is
with me on that?
I actually agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, I do. Here's one of the realities is when you are a beginner runner and you're just getting into it, you have to earn the right to be able to do hard workouts. Okay. And I don't mean to be condescending. And that is not my intention at all. It's too stressful psychologically and can often be too stressful physically to just start leaning into doing a bunch of really hard workouts. You have to build muscular strength, ligamentous strength. You have to build resilience. You have to get the calluses that are possibly unseen from just logging some miles. My recommendation to somebody who's new to running is don't worry with any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Almost exclusively, just go do easy running
Yeah.
and go
And
and try.
easy running if you're not used to running. That's what I've been telling some of my friends that have started getting into running. I'm
Yeah.
like, just run and try to do it as easy as possible, because chances are most likely if you haven't been running for a long time, you will have threshold training as soon as you step out the door, because running is hard if you're not used to it,
Well,
right?
it
And
is
so then
because if
if
you
you
think about
start,
it, if
yeah.
threshold is the pace that you can hold running for 2 to 3 hours, I would posit that somebody who's not very fit is running at their aerobic threshold for 75 to 85, 90% of every single run they do for the first several months.
Yes, I
Right?
agree.
So it's okay to not get mired in the details of when do I do tempo runs and when do I do speed work. People call it speed work, and I really understand why, because it's anything that's faster than running easy. We're just going to call it speed work because I'm speeding up. I'm running speedier than easy, so I'm going to call it speed work. Hey, you know what, folks? Breathe deeply. Give yourself some grace. Go run easily. And when I say go run easily, zone one, zone two. You know,
Hmm.
we used to call it something. It's a word that's been vilified. It's a word now that somehow people sort of respond with righteous indignation when you use it in reference to their running. Jog.
Yeah.
Jogging is fine. Go jog. Go
Hmm.
jog. Because listen, if you go from a sedentary lifestyle or maybe a sport where you don't do a lot of running, right? Or a lifestyle where you don't do a lot of running, just going out and jogging 8K is more than what 98% of the humans can do on the planet to completion without having to stop and walk. So we don't
Exactly.
need to be talking about MDVO2 pace. We don't need to be talking about critical velocity. We don't need to be talking about that is way too nuanced. It is
Hmm.
way too stressful psychologically, and we don't need to talk about the physical stress of trying to do that when you're not really even used to jogging yet. Go jog.
Hmm.
You'll get better and better and better. Here's why. We know that we build mitochondrial density through consistently applied aerobic distress. Why is mitochondrial density so important? We also know that you build distal capillaries. We call it distal capillarization from just simply consistently applied moderate aerobic stress. You could
Almost
achieve that
just
by going out and
moving.
jogging down the road,
Yeah. Almost just by moving.
almost just by moving. Your body is remarkably responsive to the stresses that you place on it. Okay?
And
If
I,
you
I
go
usually, just if I can interrupt you there, I usually describe this because I'm very visual, right? I imagine my muscles and I imagine the blood just finding new paths inside my muscles to find, like more ways to flow. So if you think of it as new paths being built kind of in your muscles, and that is
absolutely.
what you're doing with that.
Absolutely. It's like building a brand new neighborhood outside of Oslo, and then they come back and they build more and more roads. And there's faster and easier and quicker ways to get to the neighborhood because there's more pathways by which you can access the homes, right? And so um, we don't really internalize it as easily as we do in bodybuilding because you go into the gym and you slug down some creatine and a protein shake, right? When you're done, and you watch your muscles grow, and you recognize I'm going to go do curls, I'm going to go do bench press, I'm going to do dumbbell flies, and you're going to watch your pectoral muscles and you're going to watch your biceps grow. So you see the hypertrophy. Right. And so it's motivating and it's exciting. So you continue the process. It's consistently applied resistance training is going to make your muscles bigger. Also, you turn your hands over and you look at them. And if you're like me and you're a wimpy lawyer, you have nice, soft hands. You go into that weight room, especially if you're not using gloves and you're grabbing that barbell and you're doing bench press. After a while, you're going to get calluses, big, thick skin right here because it's your body's response to stress.
Mhm.
Okay. That's why we get calluses. That's why we get muscle hypertrophy from doing curls because it goes, oh, you're stressing it. And so you're going to get the hypertrophic growth. Okay. As long as you're eating enough and as long as you're taking care of yourself. In fact, frankly, I would posit, even if you're necessarily not really eating perfect and you're not even drinking any protein, just going and doing the curls alone, you're going to get hypertrophic growth.
Yeah.
Well, our aerobic system is the same, but we don't see it. Okay, because mitochondria are so microscopic, you have to look under a microscope to see them. So it's not like, oh my God, that guy is massive. He must have so many mitochondria. Well, that's not the way it works, right?
No.
But you go and you take a guy who has jogged 50K a week, all right, for 6 months, and you take somebody who plays 50K hours a month of video games sitting on his ass. Okay. But they're both 6 feet tall and they both weigh 168 pounds. Okay. They
Yeah.
look identical. You know what? We could even do it with identical twins, right?
Hmm.
But then you go and you biopsy those muscles and you go, oh my goodness, this guy has 3 times the mitochondrial density of the guy who's sedentary. How did that happen? Consistently applied moderate aerobic stress. So, what are mitochondria for? They're for lack of a better way of putting it, I'm going to give the shorthand version of the science here. It's the little engine that makes the cells go. And as long as you're breathing oxygenated air and you have red blood cells to carry the oxygen to those mitochondria, you are going to have now what's referred to as the aerobic process. Got to make sure you have an iron molecule in there too to attach to the hemoglobin,
Yeah.
and then the iron, then the oxygen molecule can bind. Okay, we got to have those things. Aerobic process in Homo sapiens. It's been that way for 10,000 years, 30,000 years. Okay, I, you have the same aerobic system that Roger Bannister had, right? And Roger Bannister had the same aerobic system that Phidippides had when Phidippides ran from Marathon to Athens to announce their victory over the Persians before he dropped dead. Okay. So that aerobic
Yeah.
system has been in place for thousands of years. Okay. And there is no change in the way we get mitochondrial density, and that is moderately applied, consistent aerobic stress. Zone 2 running is fabulous for that. Now, when we start talking about mitochondrial respiration, that is, something slightly different as far as or the efficiency at which, the mitochondria can actually then convert the oxygen into energy and all that, right? And then you want to be applying some harder workouts, uh, critical velocity paced, lactate threshold paced running really, really increase mitochondrial respiration. Okay. Mitochondrial density, go out and run a lot, and you're gonna basically get it done. That's why low volume marathon plans do not work. If they did,
Mhm.
do you think that the world's great marathoners would be out running uh 300 kilometers a week? Some of these guys, do you think that they would be doing that? No, man. I mean, listen, there's probably a soccer match on somewhere. There's probably a steak dinner they could be taking their spouse to. That they got a lot of other things they'd like to do. Maybe they have a hobby, or maybe they like woodworking in their garage. Spend a little bit more time on
Mhm.
that, a little bit less time, right? Pounding the soles of their feet against the pavement. And so low volume distance running plans generally, and I'm waving a very, very broad sword, so everybody don't come at me with, I know this guy who, listen, we all know the guy. I know a guy, Marble Falls, Texas. Okay. Famous for it. I'm just going to go ahead and name him because he'll probably chuckle. Lionel Manzano, right? Olympic medalist in the 1500. And Lionel was a very, very low volume. When I say low volume, I'm talking, we're talking about running, you know, 20 miles, 25 miles a week in high school. This guy ran 406 for the mile in high school, right? But once the college coaches, John Hayes et al., were able to get him to do more volume, then suddenly we have an Olympic silver medalist, right, in the 1500 meters, right? Because when you have that genetic ability, and then you actually achieve some mitochondrial density, which will then allow you to stay with the world's best runners until 250 meters to go, where you can pow drop that hammer, right?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
when you get an Olympic medalist, right? But all of us need mitochondrial density through moderately applied aerobic distress. That's why volume is king in the marathon business, right? Generally.
But can I ask you then, because obviously low mileage is very much a case of definition, right? So, and
Mm,
also depending on what level you are at. So most people listening to this, they might be marathoners who are trying to break the 4 hour limit or the 3 hour
yes.
limit, and or maybe some people are
Yes.
mm, like me trying to do sub 240. When you say low mileage, where if you were to kind of define this, when are you at a level where you say, okay, that's like a decent level, and when are you at the level where you're saying, okay, now we're getting somewhere, and also not to judge those who are, low mileage people, whatever, just so we don't get that pressure. I don't know.
Love it. Love it. And I appreciate the question. And it is always part of my analysis with every athlete. And this is what I
Hmm.
mean. Don't approach your marathon training when you have the bandwidth, the health, and the wherewithal to do more. Don't ask yourself, how little can I get away with? It's within the confines of my life, marriage, children, work, right? Those are the big things in adulthood that really get us, right? Our
Yeah.
our inescapable obligations that we must meet as adults before we then go and partake in our hobbies. I'm very traditional in those kinds of ways, right? Hey, take care of your business before you go and play, right?
Yeah.
Um, so within those confines, take a maximalist approach versus a minimalist approach. That's the way I define higher volume, right?
Mhm.
It's I choose not to run a lot because somebody told me that I will be just as fast at the marathon on 4 miles a day as I would on eight. Well,
Mhm.
you're 26 years old, you're super healthy, you are a really, really good athlete, you have no children, you are not married, and you have a job where you only have to work 6 hours a day. You have the time to run more. Make sure that you are engaged in the process of training for the event that you're trying to run. If you're running a
Mhm.
42K race and you're capable of running injury free and relatively moderate levels of fatigue that don't become overwhelming, that roll over into what I would refer to as both central and peripheral neuromuscular fatigue, which is what in common terms is referred to as overtraining. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, do more mileage. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
I have runners who are competitive. Almost all of them are competitive recreational or recreationally competitive runners. And I mean people that run, trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, enter their local marathon and run faster every year, all the way down to qualifying for the United States Olympic trials, or finishing high in some of your nation's biggest marathons, whether no matter
Hmm.
where you live around the globe. Okay, if that's the arena you want to be in, figure out what your bandwidth is for training, and then start trying to intelligently, safely, and scientifically just raise that bar. One of my young
Yeah.
women, who I believe is going to run in the 245 range in the third week of October, came to me as a 309 marathoner um,
Mhm.
a couple years ago. And we're now looking at the reality of running 245. And I asked her how many miles she ran, and I think she ran close to 90 miles the other week, and then knocked down a bunch of repeats yesterday on that 3x12, 4x1, 5x8. She did her fourth 1K repeat in the middle of that workout in 3:28.
Are we talking Caitlyn?
We're not talking Caitlin.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking
She's
Sam.
also ripping
I'm
it.
going to go ahead and name her Sam Oregoni. Okay.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And this is a young lady who consistently did the unsexy work, which is month after month, just being super consistent. Ran
Mhm.
36:10 for 10 kilometers in July. Ran 80:44 with for a half marathon with 3 miles directly in to a 25-kilometer headwind. Okay, at Houston.
Mhm.
Okay, we're talking about somebody who has wrestled the bear and has chosen her own relevance in this sport. And we're looking at somebody, who may run in the mid 240s, right? And
Yeah.
it was through the consistent progression of volume in an intelligent way, where we consulted on volume. We've looked at what makes sense to remain injury free, right? And don't buy into some of the isms. And I've talked about it in some other places. This 10% rule, per week. Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess it sort of makes sense, but I haven't read any scientific studies that say that 10% is exactly what you have to do. And if you do 11%, you're doomed. Or if you do 5%, then you're just a wimp and you're never going to be good. I tend to like 5%,
Mhm.
sometimes 3%, right?
Yeah.
Just do a little
Yeah.
bit at a time. But
A
if you
little bit
raise your
more.
volume 5% once every 3 weeks for 60 weeks, now that's unrealistic because you have periodizations and dips. But for the purposes of this conversation, you could look at that volume and it would be astonishing what you're going to be hitting. I mean, if you go up 3% off of uh off of 50 miles, that means you're going up a mile and a half.
Mhm.
But, go up, say, 2, 3 miles a week, maybe once every 3, 4 weeks, right? And do that for 6, 8 months on end. Oh my goodness, you're going to be at a different level, and you'll barely even feel the increases. And your body is going to build those calluses, and you're going to
Yeah.
earn that right to train harder and harder and harder and add big, elaborate stuff. You may be doing 8 times an 800-meter reps when you're sort of more of a beginner runner and just starting to do a little bit of interval work. But then one of my more elite women, I assigned her 15 times an 800 meters. And she texted me and she just said, "This has got to be some kind of a joke, but I'm actually here for it." And she went and just
Yeah.
shredded that workout. 15 800s is a lot. That's a lot,
Yeah.
right? So is 26.2 miles, right?
But I think that there are also things, something that I realized now after this weekend, because this is the first time ever that I haven't felt super bad after a marathon. So the same evening I was able to walk normally. The day
Mhm.
after, I spent 8 hours in the car. It was okay. And on Monday, I had to run with a client. And I was like, oh, this feels surprisingly okay. And I also think that that has something to do with the mileage that I've had now compared to before,
I
because
knew
my
exactly
body's
where you were
more
going.
more used to it, right? So it's
I knew
like,
exactly where
uh,
you were going. Listen,
yeah.
uh, my runners my runners, okay, who, um, do higher volume also recover from all their races more.
Hmm.
You wanna see somebody who walks like a penguin who just got shot in the ass by a shotgun? Go look at a guy that trained 50K a week for a marathon and look at how he's walking 4 or 5 days after a marathon, right?
That was me. That was me for Boston. I averaged 47 kilometers the last 3 months,
Yeah,
and I was not able to bend my knee when I was
yeah,
walking home from Boston. So, but I do want to like, I want to ask you, or maybe we can try to help the listeners a little bit to understand. Because if I was listening to this now, I would kind of ask myself,
yeah,
but what about my mileage? Am I at a low mileage? Am I
yeah,
at a high mileage?
yeah.
Because what I understand what you're saying is obviously the athletes or runners who are saying that, oh, but I am a low mileage runner, so I'm not gonna try to run more, and that's a
Oh,
problem.
yeah,
But
that
then,
is.
but with Strava, with social media, you do read and see a lot of runners having very high mileage. You see runners who are like, I have friends who are running almost 200 kilometers a week, and they're not
Amazing.
necessarily super. Yeah, that's amazing, but they're not necessarily much faster than me. But it's kind of like they are at a high mileage, and sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I should get there too. But then I also know that if I try to get there, at least right now, I would struggle with injuries and, like you said, fatigue, being overtrained, kind of.
Yeah,
And so for the listeners who are now being like, oh, but I'm at like only 60 miles or 50
yes.
miles a week, um, what would you say to them in terms of what you're saying now about the versus high mileage?
Yeah. Well, first of all, everybody is different because you have to look at injury history, injury resilience, look at lifestyle, bandwidth, and decide, does this make sense for you? Right. Two, there are cases where people are probably overemphasizing just running a ton of volume and not spending quite as much time really looking at paces that are going to be developmental, because you will hit sort of a developmental roadblock if all you do is easy running. In order to progress, in order to race well, you've got to inject critical velocity pace running, some MVO2 pace running, lots of threshold running, and aerobic threshold running, right? What do I like to do? I like to try to combine, like aerobic threshold pace and threshold pace probably into the same workout. You know, Yesterday, I, had somebody run 4 miles at just at between anaerobic threshold and aerobic threshold pace. Okay. So between their 1 hour race pace and their 2 hour race pace, right? And so,
Hmm.
and then I had them run 4 by 800 meters down at a little bit slower than critical velocity pace, but definitely faster than lactate threshold, and then go
Hmm.
back up and do another 4 mile segment at a pace that's sort of between anaerobic and aerobic threshold pace. So basically, what did we do? We did, 4 miles at about their, I don't know, 12-mile race pace. And then we did 4 by 800 at probably what would be their 8 mile race pace, and then 4 more miles at about their 12-mile race pace. And we did, and that's that we combine paces, right? And then I
Yeah.
also like to combine sometimes um, um, threshold pace and critical velocity pace, right? Go
Yeah.
and do threshold running on the front end of the workout, and then spin down, and then do a set of reps, right? I had Lindsey Bradley run a 10K fast a tempo run that was barely slower than threshold pace, right? She averaged 5:27 a mile at 7,000 feet, right? And then spin down and run 5 times an 800 and ran all of those in like 227, 228, right?
Mhm.
Combined paces on that workout, that was just last week, right?
Mhm.
And so those are ways to do it, and I would encourage people to, take their total volume, but make it voluminous enough volume so that you could say, "Okay, I'm really putting in some work here that's gonna benefit me." But really make sure that you dial in a workout that's going to be, beneficial. One of the common problems I see is that the tempo runs are too short. A lot of people come to me and they'll say, "Well, the farthest I ever ran at faster than marathon pace at one time was 4 miles or 5 miles in my marathon block." And then I'll ask them, "Well, tell me about your repeat work." Well, the most number of 1K reps I ever did was 6 in my marathon block. And I just tell them, "Hey, that's just not enough volume." Right. And then typically the reps are too fast. And so I say, "Hey, let's do this. Instead of doing 6 reps at 100% of your MVO2 pace, let's try to go for 9 to 10 reps at our peak volume during this marathon block, but let's do them at critical velocity pace and drop your recoveries from 3 minutes in between those to one." They go, "Wait, what? One?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. But divorce yourself from your relationship with interval work because you're going to be running these actually maybe a little slower than what you were in your last marathon block." So we get a 20%, 30% increase in their total running volume per week, a 30% to 40% increase in the total volume within their weekly workout, whether it's we end up getting in 8 to 10 miles of threshold work on a threshold day versus 4 to 6 miles. We do 10,000 meters of critical velocity work versus 6,000 meters of sort of MVO2-ish work that's hard, but not a lot of volume. And you're training for a marathon, not a 5K or a 10K. So, what are we doing here? You make those changes, then all of a sudden, the other side of the tunnel, they come out, and you might end up getting like a 8, 9 minute marathon PR. Somebody might go from 3:13 in a marathon down to 3:03,
I
3:04
love
by making those types of changes. Does that make
I
sense?
love this. Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
I think that this is something that everyone needs to hear, especially new runners, because I think that new runners tend to, go all out and go really hard, and
Mm.
they're
Yeah.
almost throwing up after every session, every workout. And I mean, like, if you're in it just to get exhausted, go for it. But if you want to run a faster marathon, that's not the way to go. And and obviously this is touching on intensity control that I would love for us to dive deeper into it, and also in terms of how you would structure a week of training. But then I guess like the
Yes.
answer to my question, what you're saying is that the mileage is determined by how much you can do, but still be able to have quality on those quality workouts, right? But then make sure that they are not so hard that that affects your mileage, and make sure that if you are doing it at the right intensity and you start feeling tired, then that kind of determines where you are mileage wise, and then you can start working from there. And it's not about having bad or good mileage. There's nothing that's called bad or good mileage. It's just you have to build it up and figure out what's your kind of sweet spot at wherever
Right.
you are at in your timeline of running.
People also, tend to overrun their easy runs. They run too fast, and
Yeah.
so then they say, "Well, I'm really, really tired." When I think if they slow down their easy runs, then what happens is you show up for your workouts fresher, and then you can really nail the workouts and walk away with an emotional positive. I see so many people who go out and do what's supposed to be an easy run, and they'll only do it at maybe 15 seconds a mile slower, 10 seconds a mile slower than goal marathon pace.
Hmm.
And the problem is that's really way, way, way too fast. And if everybody would slow down and realize that we need to take ego running out of it and realize that your neighbor down the street, when they see you coming, they can't really tell the difference between you running 8:30 a mile or 9:30 a mile.
Hmm.
And running slower is fine. There's no crime that's being committed. You are not about to have the cops arrive at your house and arrest you because you did your easy run too slowly. You're also not shortchanging yourself. Um, the get 1% better every day mentality has gotten us in a lot of trouble in the running space, right? Um, Compounded interest says that in 70 days, you're going to be 100% better at running. And we know that that's not possible. So do not buy into the sort of the braggadocious, sort of over the top personalities. They're yelling into your Instagram, about you got to stay hard and you got to do 1% better every day. No, man, that's not the way we do this sport. Stay relaxed. Don't try to stay hard every day. You actually want
I
it to
like
stay
to say
easy. You want it to stay easy most of the time, guys, you know?
I,
Um,
I
and this
I like to say that it's not an easy run just because you call it an easy run on Strava. Because
right?
I feel like a lot of
Yeah,
people do. It's like just because you write easy run or you have it on your schedule or
yeah,
program, then it's
yeah.
easy, and that's not the case.
It wasn't a profitable endeavor just because you say you profited.
Hmm.
You might have actually regressed. You might have actually lost because you gray zoned everything and you stripped the wiring off of your nerves, and then you're risking getting into this hazy zone of running. I call it pace purgatory. And for you Catholics, you can really understand what it is I'm saying. You're not in heaven and you ain't in hell. You're just kind of somewhere in the middle, doing something
Hmm.
that's just sort of blah, right?
Yes.
Let's not do blah running. We need to be either running easier on our easy days or
Mhm.
hitting the assigned paces that are physiologically designed for type 2 A malleable fiber recruitment and mitochondrial density and mitochondrial respiration increases. And how we do that is by doing these types of workouts. Okay. Now, you should always be doing some sort of threshold training. Okay. At one of the thresholds or a combination of the thresholds or somewhere in between the thresholds. Okay. It's all really productive work. You just have to understand you can do aerobic threshold training in extremely high doses. You can do anaerobic lactate threshold training in moderately high doses. You could do critical velocity training in much less high doses. Okay. And then MVO2 training, you have to use a lot of discretion and you have to have very, very modest doses of it.
Yeah.
Very rarely will I assign very many workouts in an entire marathon block where we do an entire workout at 100% of MVO2. It would be a very rare time because we are talking about my good runners, their 3K pace, maybe just a little bit shorter to longer than 3K, maybe what they could, the really, really, really fast runners, they could probably run 3.5K. Okay.
Yeah.
3.7K at MVO2 pace before falling apart. Guys, that's real fast running. That's really fast running and it rips and tears at your connective tissue and your fascia. It takes a longer time to recover from these types of workouts. Okay. And when you're training for a marathon, you want rhythm. We do so well
Yeah.
with rhythm, right? We love rhythm, right? Our hearts beat in rhythm. We sleep in rhythm. We eat in rhythm. We go to work in rhythm. We watch our television shows typically in rhythm. I mean, think about it. When they have a television show, a series on TV, they don't play it one week on Tuesday night at 5 p.m. and then they're like, and next week on Thursday at 8 a.m. is the next episode. Well, that's not the way it works. It comes out, 5 p.m. every Tuesday. You got the show. Everything we do is
Yeah.
in rhythm in life. Since the beginning of time, human evolution, okay, has been a rhythmic proposition in every single thing we do. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
we don't like it when people dance off rhythm to music. It annoys us to watch it. We do
Hmm.
not like in the United States to have our military marching bands marching out of rhythm because you notice it. We love rhythm. Okay.
Hmm.
Create your own rhythm within your training by being discreet, modest in your approach, restrained, so that you can then roll into the next day feeling good, have a nice run. And then the next day, have a nice run. Because you know what lack of rhythm creates? Failure.
Exactly.
Okay. If you're injured 40% of every year, that means you have 40% unavailability to get better. Okay. If you only do something 60% of the time, by definition, that's not rhythm. That's not consistency, right? If you skip 40% of your workouts because you want to play video games instead of training, you've built in inconsistency. If you only run 4 days a week and you say, well, I'm consistent. Really, what do? I run 4 days a week. I told somebody the other day, no, you're not. They're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, you were consistently inconsistent. You have built-in inconsistency. Your body is not going to feel good taking off 3 out of every 7 days. I'm not very good with math, but I think that's about 40%, 45% of every
Mhm.
of all the days. You're not running, you know? And so if you run more, you feel better. Here is a fascinating thing. And it was my one of my runners in Connecticut. She said, Jeff, honest to God, I feel better running 70 miles a week right now than I did when I was running 40 miles a week when I came to you. She
Mhm.
says, it's because it's so rhythmic now. I'm so
Yeah.
used to it. I have the calluses built up where I just feel good now. I feel really weird when I am only running like 6 miles a day. It just feels kind of off. But it took us 2 years to get there. Took us
Yeah.
2 years.
Because
Yeah.
that's, I think, is a very important thing to emphasize when we're talking about this. Because I can really uh kind of or I recognize what she said with myself, that I was struggling to keep like 40 to 50 kilometers a week at some point because of injuries and things were not really good. And all of a sudden I found myself at 150, or yes, almost 70 miles, I guess,
Mhm.
a week. And uh, that was a very big difference, but I still needed a lot of time to build myself up to that point, right? So there was a point where 4 days a week of running was more than, or not more, but that was what my body could handle. And almost needed 3 days a week to recover, because if I started doing 7 days a week immediately, I would get injured because my body wasn't used to running, right? So
Yeah.
there's this, I guess, like finding that balance when you're building yourself up. But then when you get to a point where, okay, now my body's used to running, then those excuses of saying, oh, I'm a 4 week kind of runner, that sounds more like I want to prioritize video games rather than running, right?
Or misguided information or
Yeah.
a misguided perception of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I am, right? And people start a sentence with that, and then they fill in the blank. I
Yeah.
am a injury prone runner. I am a low mileage runner. A lot of times those people perceive that they are both. I am a low mileage runner because I am injury prone.
Mm-hmm.
But then what's interesting to me is when I start breaking down why they perceive that they're injury prone, sometimes it's rubbish. And they were just told that by a collegiate coach or a high school coach that maybe didn't really understand what was going on. Or they trained so imprudently in the past that they kept getting themselves injured.
Yeah.
I would have people who were doing, a workout on Monday. They would do a hard workout on Wednesday, another hard workout on Thursday, a race on Saturday, and then a long run on Sunday, right? Well, when you're doing 5 days a week of something other than easy running, I can imagine it's pretty hard to run very much volume because you're just
Yes.
utterly exhausted. You also are at risk for bone stress injuries. You're at risk for ligamentous injuries. You're at risk of being chronically fatigued. And all these things come with that. And so I'll get some of my runners who run maybe, 50 to 60 miles a week, right? Which is 80 to 90 kilometers a week. And they say, well, I just can't do more than that. I break down why. I say, okay, let's go to doing one big hard workout a week in the middle of the week and get in a long run on the weekend. And let's fill everything in with mostly just easy, what we would refer to as zone two running. And then now they're running, 130K a week. And they went
Yeah.
from having never run a marathon to running 235 in the marathon by simply getting the volume up and injury free. One of their coaches came up to me at the US Olympic trials and she says, I got to ask you one question. How did they stay healthy training for a marathon? And I said, well, we were just very, very careful in the way we built the mileage up. And we're really meticulous in the way we applied stress, whether it's repeat work, threshold work, and built the volume. and then turn somebody from somebody who just was talented to somebody who was both talented and getting the results, right? And so
Mhm.
there's a way to get
Yeah.
it done. I want everybody to understand that even if you're a beginning runner, you are capable of so much more than what you believe. You're capable of so much. Sometimes I will message a runner and I will just say, "You are so capable." And what I mean by that is you have the ability to accomplish so much more from a volume standpoint, a speed standpoint, relevant athletic performances in the running space that are relevant to your sort of a list of dreams and goals. And the capability typically is wrestled from a well crafted plan with somebody who backs you with belief, who's scaffolding around you. And so just believe in yourself and believe it when other people tell you you can. And rather than saying, I am, typically it's something that's either less good or doesn't meet the standard of what somebody just told you you were capable of. Go, I'm listening. I can. I can.
Yeah.
And then set out to very meticulously, scientifically, and carefully just start getting it done. Start the march. Start the march up the mountain, and you're going to be okay. Typical training week for a really good runner. You brought that up. And I'm going to go ahead and answer the question, even though you didn't ask it.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
but
even
yeah,
a
because
billing runner.
I
Hey,
I want to dive into that, but just one last question on what you
yeah,
just said, because like if we jump back to the conversation we had in the first episode, we were talking about how my understanding or impression is that you really you care about your athlete, you listen to them, and although you might be tough on them, you can also be soft, or not maybe soft, but more like very understanding and consider everything that they have, whether it's things outside of running or pain here and there.
yeah,
And so in terms of that balance between you are capable and because I totally understand that you should avoid saying I am, like I am a low mileage runner or I am prone to injuries. But how are you as a coach able to balance that you are capable with having a runner who, say, someone has a lot of knee pain, and then it could also be interpreted in the way where, well, I'm capable, so I'm just going to push through this knee pain.
yeah.
And then you end up getting injured because you were too capable, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
So, and I don't think that you're doing it that way, but I'm just curious about how you balance those two.
well, I tell people flat out, um, I have a very, very low tolerance for allowing my athletes to run through pain. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we'll try it for a couple of days, see how you're managing it. Is it staying the same, going down, dissipating, getting better? Is it warming up? After 2, 3 runs, it's like, hey, we need to really have a conversation about whether or not we need to take some days off. I told
Mm-hmm.
one runner the other day, don't run tomorrow. She tried to run, uh, foot was hurting, and I said, "Okay, um, now it's a week off." And so we'd settled on a week off, physical therapy. Let's get this foot better. Running through injuries is a bad idea. Running through pain is a really, really a bad idea. People ask me, "Well, won't I lose fitness? What does this mean for my fitness?" And one time, I told somebody that's actually um, largely not my concern. It's irrelevant because if you're hurt, we got to get healthy and we can't worry about some incremental losses in fitness that you might have from taking 10 days off of running. I say incremental because you have to have 8 days of complete inactivity to actually start losing aerobic fitness. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're on a stationary bike or you're on an elliptical, you're probably really not going to lose any fitness. Okay. You may lose some sharpness, but you won't lose fitness. Right. And so I tell people, yeah, you're very capable, but capable as long as you're feeling okay and as long as you are uninjured. I mean, there's a whole lot of nuance to it rather than saying you're capable, go do it. It's like, well, your capability is contingent on your ability on that day. Um, are you ill? Are you injured? right? I mean, these are things that we must take care of. And then there are some people who actually truly have chronic injuries, who truly have a chronic situation that you have to coach around. I've had people qualify for the US Olympic trials on 5 days of running a week, on literally just 5 runs a week. We had to coach around some injury situations that reared their head so many times repeatedly that this actually was a situation where it's like, all right, you'll go and get 5 days of running, but then you're going to go and spend 200 to 240 minutes running in the pool or getting on the elliptical, right?
Yeah.
Those are things that you do. You have to individualize it, find a coach, a mentor, a confidant, a advisor who's experienced in these things, who can give you some guidance in those matters. It's really, really important, right? But
Yeah.
you want to know what? Most people are not injury quote unquote prone. Most people are really capable. With young women, make sure that you're not amenorrheic. Make sure that you don't have extended periods of reduced energy because of lack of fueling. Obviously, Reds is a big conversation right now. Elise
Mhm.
Cranny's doing a fantastic job leading the charge on the conversation in a way that's very relatable because she's in the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of considerations, bone density issues, all that stuff beyond the purview of this conversation. But generally speaking, let's go all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. If you want to be a distance runner, and I was asked if you're telling your people what's the one thing that you need to do to get better at running without actually digging in and looking at everybody's training logs, I'm like, without fail, for most people who are not already at a really elite professional level who've gotten there, for most people, the answer is simple: run more.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's funny because it's the least sexy thing. We want gallons of reindeer milk. We want peptides. We want EPO. We want, glitter and pixie dust from the god of the runner on top of some 12,000-foot mountain that will come down and bestow you with running ability. Nah, just go run more. Oh my God, that's boring because we're in the Instagram world. We're in the glitter and sunshine shooting out of our ears and our butt every day.
Yeah.
It's got to be something great. Isn't there a cone drill I can do? Isn't there a TheraBand exercise I can do? Maybe there's wind sprints uphill with a parachute I can do. No, just go run more.
Yeah.
Oh my
No, that
God.
that
Well, that's boring. Well, I'm sorry. I'm
But
sorry.
I love the way you clarified this because I totally agree with you, and I think it's so, you know, the way you explain this last part, it's great. First of all, yes, if you can handle more mileage, if you can handle more training, you will get better, right? Like there's
There
no
you
doubt
go.
about that. If you can handle it, if you can recover, you'll get better. There's I don't think there's any no one should really question that part. And then you have the
Yeah, and we're speaking in generalities, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
obviously, you have exceptions to every rule.
yeah,
Like back in the 1980s, we instituted a seatbelt rule in the state of Texas. Everybody had
mm,
to wear a seatbelt. Some of the opponents to the seatbelt law, okay, uh, told this story about a guy whose car was driving over a cliff and he was thrown from his vehicle out the window and landed on the ground and lived. And if he had been wearing his seatbelt, he would have died. That is not a very good reason to then not have a seatbelt law because one person got extraordinarily lucky, right?
no,
So,
no,
so generally,
yeah,
the answer is more mileage,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I also like how you then emphasize this part of don't run through pain in the way of like several days in a row with pain, then you take a week off, and this 8 days without any activity, then you might start losing fitness. I think that's so important because everything you say, makes sense. But then again, back to what I was saying about two people listening to what someone's saying, then I think that it's so important to clarify this because if someone just listened to the first part, they'd be like, oh, but Jeff told me to just push through that pain and run through
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then now by clarifying this, I feel like you are telling people that this is more about the mindset of not telling yourself you're something you're not, or don't
Yes.
limit your not limiting yourself just based on what someone else told you at some point or what historically has felt like it was.
When
And
people say I'm not a
yeah,
runner, when people say I'm not a runner, what they actually mean is I've never tried to run.
exactly,
Okay?
exactly. Yeah.
Because we are the greatest runners on the planet.
Hmm.
We're better than cheetahs, we're better than horses, we're better than dogs when it comes to long distance running. A cheetah will beat us in a 150-meter dash. A cheetah will not beat you in a marathon. They don't have the ability to do it. We are upright, bipedal um, mammals who have very, very little hair on our bodies. We sweat and we cool ourselves in a way unlike any other mammal on the planet can. And because we're bipedal, and the way we work from a cardiovascular standpoint, we are the superior runners of any animal on earth. And what I told somebody the other day is when you're sitting there and your driveway is slanted down toward the street and you have a toddler in a baby carrier and it starts rolling toward that street, I guarantee you, you are not walking toward that carrier hoping a car doesn't hit it. You run. Why?
Yeah.
Because we are all runners. We're all very capable runners. You just have to feed the wonderful evolutionary machine that we are, and we can
Hmm.
all be competent, at least competent runners. Almost all of us. Okay? Once again, almost all of us. Okay, I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are
Well,
some people who
always
cannot run
exception.
physically. I understand that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
A- And then we're gonna head into the structure of the training, and I'm very
Yeah.
curious about this part. And if it's okay with you, I would love for you to be a little general on this because I know that there are so many different levels of
Yes.
listeners here. So
Yes.
I'm curious about the structure in terms of like
Hmm.
you can say a normal week and also like leading it like when you get
Yeah.
closer to the marathon, how does that change?
Right. And this is Jeff Cunningham. This is Jeff Cunningham's world. Okay. So this is my take on training. Mine is a little bit different than many, many other coaches who have, tempo Tuesday and threshold Thursday, or, mop them up Monday and, tear them up Thursday, or whatever you want to call your days, workout Wednesday and, fry them Friday. I don't really know. Okay. I'm a big fan of one workout a week. And here's why. 95% of my people are working anywhere from 40 to 70 hours a week. Okay. We have limited availability. Listen, double threshold works. Double threshold is really, really good for so many people. But boy, that's tough. When you go to work at 8 o'clock, you get off completely exhausted at 6 p.m. You have two kids who need to be at baseball practice. You have to cook dinner and you have 3 loads of laundry to do. I'm not sure that you did a 6 mile tempo run in the morning. You feel like going down to the local track and running 12 times 400 meters when you have baseball practices to go to and that dinner to cook and the laundry to cook. Heaven forbid you might be a single parent and you don't even have a partner there to help you. Okay. I'm a big fan of one big workout a week. Okay. We did ours yesterday, 3 by 12, 4 by 1, 5 by an 800. And then the marathoners have a big workout this Saturday because we are in those closing weeks heading into our fall marathons. And so we're starting to ramp those up. I'm a big fan of doing one big workout a week. Typically, I will alternate between a repeat session, whether it's thousands, 800s, 1200s, um, uh, um, you know,
On
uh,
the track?
yeah, typically on the track, but you don't have to. I mean, I
Yeah.
have a good old fashioned measuring wheel. I can go out and measure 400, 800, 1K, 1200, 1200 meters, 1500 meters just on a flat piece of road. And you take a
Hmm.
spray paint can and spray a tiny, tiny little dot that maybe only you might even notice that it's there. Don't go vandalizing things, right? Or if there's a tree or there's a fence post that you know that you're going to remember exactly where it is, say, okay, this is my 800-meter mark, and then just run back and forth between 2 points. We can all get creative and get it done, okay? A flat path in a park, a safe, low traveled street that's flat, something like that, okay? And I like to do that once every 14 days. The sort of the starter pack is going to be 6 or 8, maybe times an 800-meter repeat, all the way up to a super advanced level where people are doing 14 to 15 times 800-meter repeats, maybe on a minute recovery. Or we do 8, 10, 12 times 1K. I had one athlete run 9 times 1200 meters yesterday up in Park City, Utah. That was her workout, right? On a 90-second jog recovery in between. There's a lot of different ways to get this done. right? Critical velocity is my favorite on those. You can spin down on the tail end sometimes to get a little bit of what I refer to as neuromuscular stimulus, which is actually pure speed work, which is really just recruiting those white fibers because you need a little tiny bit of it. So I might say, let's run 4 times 150 meters fast with copious 2 3 minute walk recoveries, sip some water, chat with your friend, make sure, make fun of his shorts because they're too short or something, just jack with each other, have fun, make it social.
Mm-hmm.
4 times at 200. Sometimes I'll have people do 5 times at 300-meter repeat fast on the tail end with a 100-meter walk recovery where they just walk, chat, complain about what a mean guy Jeff is, just whatever they want to do, get that done. That might be on the tail end of maybe 10 times an 800, 10 times 1,000, 7, 8, 9 times 1,200-meter reps, right? The next week. Well, if you're training for a marathon, I like to get people at the
So
least
so
in
so
sort of
just
at
so this
beginner
is what
level.
so this is Wednesday usually
Yeah,
that they
Wednesday,
that
but you
what
could
you
float it to Tuesday. If you
yeah,
have
yeah.
an early morning meeting at 7 o'clock with the board of your company every Wednesday, well, then do it on Tuesday. Or
Mm-hmm.
what if Tuesday and Thursday, Wednesday are super, super busy? Thursday, you might not even have to be in at work at 10 a.m. because of your work schedule. Do it on Thursday. There's no rules to this, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of float it middle of the week. You'll be fine, right? Now the next week your workout, maybe do something that is higher end aerobic, that's slower paced, and is in those threshold ranges, right? So, I mean, I've done 8, 10 times a mile repeat. Um, 2 weeks ago, we did a 6 mile tempo run at 5 seconds per mile faster than gold marathon pace, right? And then 4 times 800 meters down at a little slower than critical velocity pace, a little slower than 10K pace on minute and a half jogs, right? And then jogged a little extra after the fourth rep to get a little bit of extra rest. And then I said, all right, everybody go and do 2 miles, 3K, and let's do this at half marathon pace, which is more like lactate threshold pace rather than slower, right? Which is because the 6 miler was probably between aerobic threshold and lactate because it was a little faster than marathon pace. And these people, for a point of interest, these people all run between 2:16 and 2:55 in the marathon. So I'm not talking about people who run 4 hours, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about people who were doing this 6 mile tempo run anywhere from 5:10 pace, and then all the way up to like 6:40 pace on the slowest end for the slowest runners. Okay, and then on the tail end, like I said, we did 2 miles, so it was 6 miles, 4 by 8, 2 miles. That's a big workout with a 2 mile warm up and a 2 mile cool down, right? That's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. That's like 12. That's 14 miles of work. 15
Mm-hmm.
miles if you count the jogs between the reps. You got to 15 miles of
Yeah.
work on a Wednesday morning, right? And then everybody scooted off, went and chugged down some electrolytes, drank some protein, went to work. That's what we did. But you can do all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. 4 by 2 mile reps, with maybe a fast mile on the tail end. I had somebody do that this week. It's incredible, just incredible numbers of different variations on it. I had one person, like I said, do four miles and then 4 times an 800 and then 4 miles. Some people did 6 miles, 4 times an 800, 2 miles. Sometimes we just do a straight, 7 mile tempo run and then go to and then drink some water, go jog a little bit, and do 2 or 3 times 1 mile repeats at faster than half marathon pace with 2 minute jogs in between, right? That's a hell of a workout. You go and do 7 miles at 6 minute pace, go and jog a little bit, and then go and do 3 by 1 mile repeats in 5:40 to 5:45 with a mile and a half, with a minute and a half rest. You can do that, and your volume is up around 70, 80 miles a week. You're probably going to be able to run under 240 in a marathon, right? 6:05
Yeah.
pace is 2:39. You're probably going to be able to get that done 5, 6, 7 weeks after doing a workout of that type. If you, take care of all the other stuff in your life, sleep, recovery, diet, stuff like that.
So then you have the, like you said, midweek, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, depending on your
Hmm.
life, and then you have some long runs or with
Hmm.
some
Some
work
easy
in
runs,
there.
right?
Yeah, or
It's
so the long run for you, is that usually with some work in it, or do you use that more at, yeah, because that's what
Yeah,
I
no,
thought.
and it's a good question. Typically, 2, 4, 6, and 8 weeks out, we'll put some work into it.
Hmm.
Sometimes a little further out than that, but it might be a little baby workout. Like last week, I let some people who aren't racing until November 8th dig into it just a little bit. So we had some fun. 8 times 4 minutes at just under goal marathon pace, and then 2 minutes easy in between. So we did eight sets of 4 minutes on, 2 minutes easy in the middle of a 18-mile run. And that was like 9, 10 weeks out from the marathon. Right.
Hmm.
But as we get closer, like this week, um, you might have somebody do a bulkier session. All my Berlin people did their last one last week. Okay. For instance, Lucy Davis, right? Out of the UK was here in town, and we did, 6 miles on the front end easy, 5 miles at just under marathon pace, a mile easy, then 2 miles at significantly under marathon pace, a mile easy, and then back up, and then another 5 mile tempo run at just under marathon pace, and then finish up her cool down to get to 35K or
Yeah.
22 miles. Same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was 17 days, 16 days prior to the Berlin Marathon. We did that.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks before that, it was 4 mile,
And
3 mile,
how
2 mile,
tired
1 mile cut down.
how tired would you estimate that she is at the end of that run?
Oh, tired. Tired. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
you're running 22 miles. You're running 4 miles short of a marathon, and 12 of those miles were done at faster than marathon pace. Oh, yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
but still, like, so, because I feel like there's a difference between being tired and being dead, right? Or there is a difference between
no,
being
she
tired
wasn't
and being
crushed.
dead.
No, she wasn't
No.
crushed. I mean, she was able to go out, the next day for a job. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you do have to build in significant recovery. And so what I did was, is it was, I pushed the next session to like Wednesday, or was it today? Right. And that
Hmm.
session was done on Friday. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all easy in there, with one
Yeah.
of the days completely off of running. You must give your body rest. We love to kill ourselves, but we don't like to baby ourselves. We love to drain the tank, but we don't enjoy doing the things that refill the tank. And those
Hmm.
things are sleeping, eating, and then running really, really easy on your easy days. So when I'm talking about these Wednesday workouts, people may be asking, well, what do you do with Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday? Well, here's what I do. I'd say, okay, I want you at 60 miles this week, Sally. So little Sally will go on and we'll talk about it, and we'll say, okay, so Monday and Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday, do enough volume, especially on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, so that we can get that number to about 60 miles, spread the miles out evenly. Okay. Then we're going to do our shortest run, maybe a little bit of fartlek with some strides, some 20-second surges in a run on a Friday to spin the wheels and just turn over, a little bit of neuromuscular stimulus. Then we'll go in and do an 18, 17, 18, 20-mile run on a Saturday. Then
Hmm.
typically with a runner
Exactly.
who's running 60, 70 miles a week, do that in 6 days, take Sunday completely off. Or do your long run Sunday, take Saturday off. Until you get up to 80 miles a week, I think that it's really beneficial to just go and do it all in 6 runs, take one day completely off a week. That way you can go and, watch your favorite NFL team lose to somebody on Sunday, or watch, Arsenal like lose to Man U or whatever. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is we want to do, right? Once you
Do
get
you
up to
believe
80,
in
90
one
miles a
day a
week,
week? Yeah. Sorry,
once you
I
get to
think you're
80,
getting
90,
there.
100 miles a week, you're running 7 days a week, you
Yeah.
know. Uh, but you have those calluses built up. Your body's used to
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
I find no correlation between the volume people are doing and how many injuries they get.
Hmm. No.
In fact, what I find is the most oft injured runners I have actually are all the low mileage runners, not
Yeah.
the high mileage runners. My high mileage runners almost never get hurt.
But what's interesting about what you're saying here is that, and like if I look at my own training, that is kind of the same. That you have 2 days a week where you know that, okay, these days are gonna be the days where I put in the work, and then the rest is kind of just filling the holes of
Yeah,
whatever it is, and those holes are filled with easy runs, right? And
yeah,
then you have to make sure that if you had if you had that really hard workout on a Friday, like the example that you had, maybe that easy run on Saturday shouldn't be the longest easy run of the week, but like a bit
hmm
shorter, because you need
Yeah.
to recover more. But it's still like those easy runs are just what you're filling the rest with, and then you have the framework, which is those two harder workouts.
Yeah, those easy runs are to for recovery. They keep your mitochondrial density at a nice steady level, right? Mitochondria typically have a half life. A life of about 6 to 10 days. And so when I said you lose aerobic conditioning, if you have 8 days of complete inactivity, that's sitting on the couch eating bonbons, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's because your body starts shrinking the number of mitochondria because of disuse, because your body says, oh, well, this guy quit running. We don't
Mm-hmm.
need to maintain this number of mitochondria, so we're just going to shrink them. They'll shrink capillaries too, right? Your body will shrink what it doesn't need, right?
Yeah.
Think about that. Your body will shrink what it doesn't need. It's not going to just needlessly maintain something, right? Because your body
Yeah.
has a budget and your body works on a
Mm-hmm.
budget, and
Yeah.
your body's not going to spend a lot of its budget on things that it doesn't need. So it'll just shrink them. And then you notice your calluses will go away on your hands. If you take a year off from lifting, your hands get soft. We always make, oh, that guy's got soft hands. Yeah, well, it's because he's an office worker. He's not out there throwing bales of hay on a farm that's 90, 100 degrees every day, for, 200 days a year. Soft
Yeah.
hands. Yeah.
And now we're talking obviously a lot about running, and I know that you have athletes or runners that you are coaching. We talked about Nick Bear last time, which obviously spends a lot of time in the gym, and you have Caitlyn Miller, who also spends a lot of time in the gym. And then you have runners like, I know that Eric Floberg, he's like fairly fresh to the strength training, right? Like he didn't do that much of that
Hmm.
previously. Same with Joe Greer. He
Yes.
kind of recently discovered
Yeah.
strength training for runners. What is your, or what are your thoughts? What's your philosophy when it comes to strength training for runners?
Don't overdo it, but everybody be doing something. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, do some squats, some dumbbell squats, pistol squats, deadlifts, so lots of mobility stuff. Listen, it's varied. Find somebody who can give you a rudimentary strength plan that's going to work for you. I would say hitting legs twice a week is plenty. And you're not trying to lift to try to figure out how to squat a Toyota, right? You're doing it to have enough strength and also have some mobility, but strength to basically help buffer you against injury, and with some nominal increases in performance, and it can aid with running economy. Right? We don't have to guss it up. We don't have to be so elaborate with it that we create neurologic fatigue because we're like, oh my God, I got this super elaborate, supersetted this, that, and the other, and I have a project due at work for my boss, and then I have a double threshold that I got to do. Hey, let's try to keep things as simple as possible. Okay. And so when it comes to the strength, be doing something.
Mhm.
Something's better than nothing. Do not do nothing, because a lot of times you end up getting an injury or getting banged up because you've got some imbalances. With a lot of women, really, really address posterior chain strength, ladies. Okay. Especially young women in their mid-teens into their early 20s have notoriously weak hip girdles and weak posterior chain. So they tend to retrieve their foot a little bit from the outside as it comes through, and you can end up with IT band syndrome, patellar tendonitis, knee pain, things like that. So just address the strength component maybe a couple of days a week, and it can help from a preventive standpoint from you getting these irritating little things, hip flexor injuries, specifically. You have like TFL injuries, which is a tiny little muscle, on the anterior, the front part of your hip, that can be maddening. Tugs on the IT band, you can end up getting IT band syndrome. So let's just try to do. And even then, we're not always going to avoid injury. Listen, nothing's a guarantee. Strength training can be super helpful, but don't be crazy elaborate. Something you can get done in 30 minutes twice a week. That's all.
Mhm.
Don't gust this up with something that's so complicated that you stress yourself out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's much better to do something like you're saying rather than aiming at having like an hour and a half and then you end up not doing it because you think you don't have time for it. So,
There you go.
uh,
Yeah, it's got to
yeah.
be sustainable and reproducible. And if you keep it short and sweet, you tend to want to be able to do it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of injuries that we're talking about now, we talked a lot about the training, and obviously that is the most important part of our running. But then running is, after all, also a technical sport, right? Like the best runners will have the best technique, for at least for them. How much do you as a coach focus on the technique for your runners? Do you comment on that at all, or is that something that you're just kind of, yeah, that you don't focus on?
Don't focus on it much. I
Yeah.
don't focus on it much. There have been some debates on how important it is, and if it's absolutely ghastly and it's obviously a major problem, then we've got to make some major changes in people's running mechanics. People run more efficiently the more they run. One of the advantages of running a lot is that your body will
Exactly.
naturally gravitate toward its most efficient way of going down the street,
Yep.
and it's going to vary based on people's physiology. Like, for instance, you know, you've got a whole bunch of different ways that your collarbone actually sits on your shoulder. You have a type 1, type 2, and type 3 acromion process. I'm not going to get into a bunch of orthopedics, but you have natural, normal variants on human physiology in the way your ankles are. I mean, you look at some people, they supinate, some people pronate, some people have a midfoot strike, a heel strike, a toe strike, and it's really just sort of their physiology. Okay. There is very little evidence that being a midfoot or a toe striker is going to, or you're going to be a faster marathon than somebody who's an efficient heel striker. An efficient heel striker is somebody whose heel hits the ground first, but not way, way, way out in front of them. Hits the ground a little bit in front of their body, and their forward momentum is such that they pull through. Okay. I would actually say that most marathoners are heel strikers. So this whole notion that you have to be a midfoot striker to be a really good marathoner is complete rubbish. I'm sorry, but I mean, if anybody ever saw Rob D. Costella run a marathon from Australia back in the 1980s, he was one of the great marathoners in the world. To compare his mechanics to Alberto Salazar's, and then compare Salazar's mechanics to Carlos Lopez's, right, mechanics, or Frank Shorter's, everybody's different. And
Yep.
they were all brilliant, right? Look at Joni. I mean, Joan Benoit Samuelson won the Olympic marathon in 2:24:50 in 1984. And Joni was not a toe striker, guys. Go and watch the clips. And Joni ran 2:24, and Safan Hassan just broke the Olympic record and ran 2:22. So in 40 years, the Olympic record came down 2 minutes. And Joan Benoit Samuelson was a heel striker. So, guys, let's not worry too much about that, because here's what happens. People who are running 30K a week will say, what supplements do I need to eat? Can I send you a video so you can analyze my mechanics? Can you do this?
Mhm.
And I go, whoa, 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 stop. They're like, what? I'm like, you got to start running, man. Like,
Yep.
there's no supplement that you're gonna take that's gonna make you better. Listen, man, I don't need to analyze your mechanics. Go run 30 miles, then run 32 miles, then 34, then 38, then 40, then 50.
Mhm.
And guess what? Your mechanics actually are gonna get a little bit better as time goes on, because your body will naturally gravitate toward a more efficient state, especially if we inject repeat work, threshold work, where we force your body to start trying to run faster. It's going to end up working its way toward its max efficiency. Generally, I don't address it much. I'll be honest with
Um,
you.
Yeah. No, but I like that, and I think that it's like you're saying that the more you run, the better it will be, and the more efficient you will be.
Yeah.
I did notice that this summer, where for the first time ever, I just had, I don't know how many days in a row I was running, but I just didn't have any rest days. And it wasn't that I was running very far every day. Some days it was just like going out with my dog
Right.
for a little jog. But that's probably the months that I've had the least pain and where I've felt the most efficient with my running, because I was just running all the time, right? Like my body just knew exactly what to do. So when I
Yeah.
woke up, my body knew we're going running.
Yeah. And listen, there is such thing as an overuse injury. We get bone stress injuries from running too much. We can get those things, but listen, those are endemic to the activity of running. I mean, do not ever expect to play your entire soccer career without spraining an ankle. Don't
Yep.
expect to play hockey without losing a tooth, right?
Hmm.
I'm sorry, it is an endemic element to participating in athletics. You will get banged up. Lifting weights can really help with your running economy, your efficiency, and your mechanics to some degree, right? You
Yep.
will run really well if you have basically, listen, if you have a strong butt and you have strong hamstrings, you're probably going to be able to be a little bit more efficient, especially on your pull through when you're retrieving your foot from your back kick as you're bringing your knee forward, right? So
Hmm.
let's do these things. But one of the least important things is needing to go and get a gait analysis done. Sorry, I said it. It is what it is. There are going to be some people, well, for me, I did it. Hey, I'm not saying they don't work, but what I'm saying is that is literally one of the last things we need to worry about when it's like, hey, you can run with a perfect gait and get last in a race. You
Hmm.
spent all your time working on your gait when the other guy was just out running down the road. Let's focus on the running. Uh, I've talked about this one other time. I'll never forget a conversation I had with the great Pat Tyson. He's the head coach at Gonzaga University, right now. He ran for University of Oregon back in the golden years in the early 70s, okay, late 60s. And I said, I want to do frog jumps and I want to do box jumps. And I had this young man. He was the best talent I had ever coached at the time. And he goes, Jeff, stop. I says, what's going on? He goes, he's 17, man. He goes, just make it about the running. He's 17. Let some college strength and conditioning coach worry about all that. Just focus on the running. He'll be okay.
Yeah.
He's in high school. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. I was trying to guss it up. I was trying to overcomplicate it a
Hmm.
little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
most people, that'll work. For most people,
Yeah.
that's enough. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I like that approach. So Jeff, now we've been talking for 1 hour and 43 minutes here, and
Oh,
I'm curious. No, I love it. I
yeah.
think
I
that this is
apologize to the
so.
listeners for this one.
You know what? The listeners are gonna thank you again. So, uh, I'm I'm curious now that that we've been talking for this long, and I know that you kind of had kind of a picture in your head going into this call about what you wanted to share.
Hmm.
Do you feel like you have shared the things that you wanted, or are the things that we haven't touched on that you would like
Um,
to talk about?
last big picture thing to sort of like, I think round it all up, because it's been a sort of a wide ranging conversation. Get into the running. Make sure that you have an advisor and you have a plan that you're confident in. Slowly build your volume in a way where you can avoid the hiccups that create inconsistency, which is mainly illness and injury. Okay. And within the framework of your life, maximize your potential by investing in the process of training for the event that you've entered, which is the marathon. Get your volume up to an appropriate level. And there's a direct link to how much you run and how fast you run. And if your satisfaction, in part, in participation in the sport, is seeing sort of a time on a clock at a finish line, and I understand there's some people who actually don't care, and that is just fine. I think people think all I care about is times. I don't. I care about people's happiness and fulfillment. That's what I care about, right? But if running faster is an element of what it is you want to achieve, understand that you need to do the things that generally the scientists and the coaches in this business agree are going to make you faster. Run more, inject some um, tempered, controlled repeat sessions where sprinting is rarely, if ever, part of any of it. When in doubt, run slower, not faster, or run easier, not harder on a hard session. Make sure you're getting some element of tempo running, which is sort of between or at the thresholds, okay? And some repeat running that is MVO2 pace up to lactate threshold. And if you're getting those things done in decent doses, you are going to end up being way better of a runner than you were before. I promise. Um, it's going to happen. And invest in yourself, invest in your joy, invest in what you define for your success, and then chase it. Grab onto it, and it's a bronco. It's a bull. It's going to start bucking. Just don't let it kick you off. Don't let it buck you off. Don't get thrown off. Just stay in the saddle. Okay, if you're on a bucking bronc, stay in the saddle. You're going to be okay. That's my encouragement to everybody. Invest in you, believe in you. You're capable. You are so capable.
I love that. That's amazing. Thank you.
Okay, and if anybody has any questions, I'm scared to do this, but feel free to DM me. I'm at JD Cunningham 97 on Instagram. You can shoot me a DM. Be patient. I try to get back to so many of you. A lot of times, your questions are all valuable. The only dumb question is the question that does not get asked. I do not ridicule anybody because I'm in it, because I view myself as a coach, and coaches are teachers. Teachers should never ridicule anybody who has a legitimate question. Okay, so there is no dumb question, because what you don't know, you don't know. Ask
Mhm.
it. I'll answer it.
Yeah.
I'll try to get back to you as quickly as I can. Right. I get sometimes, a lot of messages and stuff, but I try to get back to people as much as I can. And I value my time. I value my ability to reach out to people and help them. This is an unbelievable sport. It has given so many people so much, and it's not frivolous. Your running goals and your running dreams are not stupid. They are not stupid. They matter so much. Lean into it. Lean into you. Let's kick some ass.
Thank you, Jeff. I really hope that we'll meet in person soon. It's fun. We've spent like more than 3 hours together right by now in a week
Hey,
on these calls, and
listen,
I
we've been
appreciate
on
you.
this so long, Christian. Even though you're in Oslo and I'm in Texas, you could probably smell my cologne. That's how close
Probably,
we've
yeah,
gotten in the three
yeah,
hours, right?
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate you.
All
It's
right,
not
buddy.
nice to say, nice to be able to finish this and say that Jeff Cunningham is my buddy right now.
You're my buddy. You need to go to sleep. It is
It's midnight.
almost 11 p.m. there. No,
It's
almost midnight.
midnight. Yeah,
Midnight. All right,
yeah,
go to sleep.
12 a.m. Well, I will. Thank you so much for coming on, and good luck with all the runners and the fall marathons coming up.
Berlin's coming
Yeah,
fast.
fast.
I'll talk to you later.
Almost 2 hours of chatting with Jeff, and I do understand why people love him. I understand why he has such good athletes. There's so much knowledge there. He knows exactly how to coach his runners. He knows exactly what it takes to run faster times. And it's also really, really inspiring. I think that the athletes being coached by Jeff, they are probably doing a lot of good things, like the right things. But I also feel like his way of inspiring and motivating the runners must be one of his greatest or his biggest advantages or skills as a coach. So that was it for the Marathon podcast this time. Next episode is actually with Tim Rossi, who works in Bandit. And so we have actually now twice in 1 week, two of the people in the upper management of a couple of the biggest running brands in the States. Really excited about that conversation. We talked a lot about the community. We talked a lot about Tim Ross's own running. He's a very fast marathoner himself. And I think that was also a very inspiring conversation. So can't wait to share that with you guys on Friday. And if you haven't already, follow this podcast, give this podcast a review, and maybe also head over to YouTube and watch one of my videos there. Made a recap from my 247 marathon just a few days ago. So excited about that one. Thank you again for listening to the Marathon Podcast. Really, really appreciate it. Have a good one. Enjoy your run if you're out running, and I'll talk to you in the next one. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wall Studio.